I'm Sheri Parks, and I'm watching Freedom Radio.
This room right now, who chose to stay here, obviously there's a lot of things going on. You have classes and things of that nature, but for those of you who chose to stay, there's some level of commitment that you're willing to do above and beyond. And that means that you have a responsibility. Now, I don't know what that responsibility may or may not be. Maybe it's to document it. Maybe it's to teach it. Maybe it's to be more vocal about it. Maybe it's to do something else. Be an owner, give opportunities to people. So it's a very interesting story going on in Ferguson, but guess what? Ferguson is just not Ferguson. It's easy anywhere in Maryland. Yeah. It's easy anywhere in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, anywhere you go across the country. And if we don't deal with these issues, and if we don't feel some kind of level of responsibility to deal with them, in our equally shared humanity that we deal with each other, then I don't know where we're going right now. It's looking real dangerous.
I'm Sheri Parks. We're at the University of Maryland, where I am an associate professor in American Studies, where I study mythology and public information. I'm also associate dean for research, interdisciplinary scholarship, and programming, which means I do transdisciplinary work and social engagement with faculty and students. We have just viewed your wonderful film as a way of, I think, a type of intellectualism, of activist intellectualism, so that students and staff who saw it can understand, one, what's been happening on the ground with long-form journalism that they don't get anywhere else. And also, I called it a jazz composition because I saw the rhythm and the pacing and the overlapping of visuals and audio in such a way that you end up feeling it, not only thinking about the content, but you bringing it into your being in a way that I think music does. Mm-hmm. So I think it's brilliant. If I were an undergraduate student, I would also want to ask not only about the content, but about the rhythm and the pacing of the film. So I hope we get to that, because it's in some ways a jazz composition.
I'm glad that's a compliment that you said it was a jazz piece, because there was a lot of aspects of the film that I tried to incorporate the difference of treatment with black people in general. Like, black people, we know how we're treated. And sometimes when we get caught up in conversations with people that don't necessarily understand that experience, it's hard to explain, because you're not living that experience. And sometimes you have to do something like this just to have a conversation. How do you see a film like this being utilized in the college university system, specifically as an educational tool?
Oh, well, it starts with a very complex idea that black men live in a paradox, that they live in a contradiction between the American dream and the social reality on the ground. That's a couple of lectures in and of itself, I think. And then you move on from there. So there are many complex ideas, because it's a very complex situation. And I think it's incumbent of students to not only study about these ideas, but to see how they get played out in life, especially in lives that may be different from their own day-to-day life.
I'm a firm believer in ownership, and like I said, ownership is really, it starts with me, about your own mouth. Do you own what comes out of your mouth, your speech? You understand what I'm saying? It's really that simple. If you are owned by your paycheck, that's cool. I mean, I get it. We have to take care of your family and pay house notes and do whatever you need to do. But I guess, in a bigger sense, when there's issues of justice, especially that have to do with a certain level of accountability that we should all share with each other as human beings, and your mouth is more dictated by the paycheck that you're getting versus the issues of the justice, and there's that imbalance, then we have to kind of, get balanced, get back right.
And what's interesting, because the title of your film is Don't Shoot My Youth Movement. And the point he just made about paychecks and bills and mortgages is exactly why youth are usually at the forefront of movements. If you look at the history of most of the movements in the United States, young people have been at the forefront because they have the freedom to do that. And that's why it's important for youth not to be shut down.
Yes, definitely. And taken advantage of and co-opted and commodified. Speak about the importance of independent media. A lot of the issues that happen that impact the broader society, and let's just be more specific about black people in this example, there's a huge need for independent media. Talk a little bit about how you value independent media and the essential tool that plays in terms of, this broader educational engagement that needs to happen through maybe creative sources like the media and art sometimes.
Well, I see it through the prism of the old black press. There would not have been a civil rights movement. There would not have been a northern migration. One of the things that the black press was able to do, for instance, you know that the early history of the civil rights movement was actually predated by black women organizing against systemic and terroristic rape. And that the white press was not reporting it. It was the black press that reported it, and then the Russian press picked it up, and then it became an embarrassment, and the Justice Department called down and said, you need to do something about this. The black press and other types of independent press have been pivotal in bearing witness. I think that is probably the highest calling for media, is to bear witness. And you can't bear witness if you have to always worry about how the powerful are going to see what you do. And I think that is the importance of having a free and independent media. Social media will do it to a degree, but there always has to be an organizing intelligence. There always has to be someone like a filmmaker or a journalist who can sort through the trash, frankly. Just kind of, we don't need to see the kittens today, and organize it into an argument. And I think that's important. So you need both. You need people on the ground, but you also have to have somebody who can stand back and organize it into an order, an orderly, so that people can understand it, can teach.
I think it's interesting when we were watching the film, and one of my classmates said de facto black leadership, because it's interesting to see on posters and pictures of protests and movements, you see these key black figures throughout time, but then when you look at the documentary, you see these young African American males not afraid to put their lives on the line. We don't hear about them. You know, it's only through these sorts of avenues in media that we get to see, oh yeah, it's not Jesse Jackson standing in front of the tear gas, it's these black men who do have a level of intelligence. And it makes you angry because it's like, the level of politics involved is so discouraging, because it's like everything's wrapped up in politics, it's wrapped up in capitalism. I mean, just thinking about President Obama as a black man, of course he probably feels some type of way about what's happening, but in order to secure his political position and to secure his wealth, he has to sort of have a level of cognitive dissonance. And so I think that that's so frustrating, and I think it's important that not just black women and black men, but people of all races understand it's not the fact that we don't understand what's going on, it's the level of politics that's involved that's sort of creating this dichotomy and resistance between getting something done and sort of the theory behind it.
I want to thank you for Freedom Radio, first of all, for having us present Hands Up, Don't Shoot, our youth movement here at the University of Maryland, and also encourage anybody that is seeking higher education to, how do they reach out to your department, and maybe if they have some kind of interest in the social sciences and things of that nature?
Well, in the humanities,
yes.
American Studies actually is a social justice major.
Okay.
So I mean, all of our graduate students, most of our undergraduate students, are working on issues, and on their own issues, not ours. That's not what we require. So they come in and we give them the tools.
That's right.
To do the type of investigation they need to do, and we do a great deal of. And then once you have the information, you give it back to the people that gave it to you to churn. Looking at history, you know, I'm a child of the Black Power movement. I was born from my parents, and in that age group, I was the first generation of children in that, I guess. Now, we've gone from Black Power to Black Lives Matter. That's a major transformation in terms of how you identify with yourself. It's going backwards. Right. Yeah. You know, I would arguably say definitely, and that's a whole nother topic. But I think when you look at all these issues right now, whatever's going on, we have to look very critically about them, document them because they happen so quick,
Many times, especially if your main primary source of media is through the corporate media, you know, you're not able to get deep with the story and understand the nuances, especially around history and how history plays a direct role in what we see today, in line with the Dred Scott case, which was a part of the 13th Amendment, that basically said black people are really just on par with animals. They have no human status. And for people at the college campus, because a lot of these historical things that we bring up, let me just say very plainly, we're not far away from slavery at all. And I'm going to show you how close we are. My mom is in the audience, right? My mom's great-grandfather.
Okay.
My mom's right there, okay? My mom's grandfather's oldest brothers and sisters were slaves. Right, Mom? Do you understand what I'm saying? I can go up there and touch my mom's hand. Her grandfather, his older brothers and sisters were slaves. This is not long ago. So a lot of times when black people talk about these issues and they're playing out, you know, they're playing out right now. This is not, you know, thousands of years ago. This is something that we can almost touch. And we're definitely not in anywhere of a conversation in getting any kind of reparations or justice for that crime. So, you know, we have a real issue going on right now in America.
I really appreciate your documentary because, you know, I hear about things, but just to see a black man getting shot point blank made it real because I hear about it. I don't necessarily, I'm not going to go to YouTube and say, yeah, let me watch the video of Eric Garner being choked, you know, because there's that level of like, okay, I don't want to believe that this is really how America is, you know, and I think that your documentary did a good job of sort of showing, no, this is real, this is happening. And it presents me, everywhere, and it sort of presents me with the choice to, okay, I do need to take some type of part in it. I do have a responsibility, and I think the question that I'm left with is, well, what is that responsibility? What can I do? Because I'm also sort of, there are politics involved with me being educated. You know, I have to go to classes, I have to graduate, and then I have to get a job, but then there's that part of me that's like, I want to be out there with them, standing on the front lines, defending this, but then at the expense of my education, at the expense of me, you know, so there's all those sort of conflicts that we go through, and I just think that I applaud your documentary, and I applaud the black men and women who decided, okay, I don't care about the politics, let me just get out here and do what I think is best.
You can do anything you want to do. Yes, you're going to have your job. Yes, you're going to be accountable to some system as you choose to do it. But create a lane for yourself to be an owner. Because once you're an owner in anything you do, you have a free voice and you're not owned by the systems that many times that we struggle against.
And I would add to that, Ralph is an educated man. I mean, he has chosen to move through the world in a certain way, but he knows how to do research. He has skills. What you're doing is getting tools, and listen to what he said in terms of figuring then out what is your role in the larger picture, because there's a role for everybody. There's a role for intellectualism.
Yes.
There's a role for intellectualism that becomes praxis. The theory becomes practice. And so often there are things that you can do as long as you do your intellectualism in a way that can be fed back to people who need it. There are things that you can do in 5 minutes that it would take 2 weeks for somebody else to do. Your university passport gets you into worlds of information. Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
No, I know. Thank you very much.